well aware that there's a thing called death by PowerPoint. So my Zoom bar is in the way of this. Great, let's see if this works. So what I attempted to do here is enter some hand-drawn slides because I wanted to make it a little bit more human, a little bit more interactive, because that's the essence of culture. It's a bit of an interesting topic. We're all here today talking about failure-friendly. I love the idea of failure-friendly environments because that's where, as businesses and as business leaders, we often gravitate around innovation and cutting edge and scale and growth and even iterative design processes, and all of those beautifully awesome attributes of great business center around trying, taking risk, stepping into the unknown, which necessitates failure or the potential of failure. And yet failure isn't a sexy topic. I can remember a couple of times as I was learning to integrate failure into my being. It's like, failure is a part of human life. Like I was reading a quote the other day, I've heard it long ago, to err is human, to forgive is divine. Like we constantly try things that don't work and fail. Yet it is a real challenge to find workplaces or even friend groups where failure is part of the normal culture. And you're going to hear me today as we walk into this. I'm not going to espouse like a free-for-all or fail without consequences. I mean, oftentimes failures come with great consequences, and I think good business practice is mitigating those failures proactively. And you're going to watch me point towards things like effective communication as like I drew my little diagram here, and this slide is called For the Love of Cake, because there's always pie charts in people's graphs, and I wanted to do something a little different, but also described that there's layers, and the green, the icing on the cake, is effective communication. And why I'm going to keep coming back to that is because, if you had a carrot cake here, but you didn't have the icing, you'd simply have a muffin, and muffins are way less enticing than cake. As much as we're going to learn some fundamental principles of what goes into a fail-friendly culture, I want to stake the claim for effective communication throughout the process, and that will really be the grease on all the wheels for us as we go forward. So just because I want to respect your time, because it's valuable, and at the end of this, I want you to take away some valuable insights that you can utilize with your teams. I want to dive right in, and then we're going to come back out, and then we're going to walk through the process. So to have a safe to fail environment where innovation thrives, we're really asking a couple of key questions. You're going to watch me describe how failure goes in 4 directions, but it also comes towards us or away from us. And I'm going to liken that to breathing, because I can exhale out and fail towards you. If I show up late to your meeting, I have failed in your direction. And then breathing in, if you show up late to my meeting, you have failed in my direction. Very simple analogy there. But when you fail towards me, you're fundamentally asking me this question: am I okay? When you blow the budget and the budget's late or the timeline's shot, and you report that to your manager, your failure is actually asking the manager, are you okay? But the failure is also simultaneously, your failure is asking you, do I belong here? Because we've all been trained through life circumstances, whether it be school or parents or harsh bosses. If I fail, I might get ejected from this place. So if your failure is asking you whether you belong, and it's asking me whether I'm okay, those are the core attributes of belonging that I want to anchor the concepts of failure in today. And why I'm saying that, because as people who are passionate about culture, belonging is at the epicenter of great culture. People who belong thrive. They open up. They become the best and purest versions of themselves. And belonging encompasses a whole lot of topics. And the piece of this cake today is safe to fail, because if you belong here, there's space for you to make an error and recover. There's space for you to try and fail. There's space for you to not be perfect. That's part of the gift of your belonging. Now, I'm also going to say that your belonging, you as individuals and the employees that we work with, their belonging, your belonging, my belonging, it's not negotiable. Fundamentally, it's not negotiable. I can't control your belonging. I can't make you belong, and I can't take it away. But as we've all experienced, there are actions that I can do, that you can do, that can really challenge somebody's felt sense of belonging. And there's also actions that we can do that really foster and cultivate belonging. And their failure is this, moments of failure, moments of challenge are precious moments, because it's in those times that we discover really what's in the deepest parts of ourselves, because it's when it's uncomfortable that that the insides come out. You know, what's on the inside comes to the surface, because it's easy to be okay if everything's okay. But what happens when something's not okay? Am I still okay? Is it still okay? Are we still okay? Because the circumstances can really challenge that. So that's the high level overview here, and then we're going to jump right in. And to start, I want to walk you in. I think this title is going to come up. So I'm going to walk us into a little visioning exercise here. I want you to join me on the high seas and see if we can come together in this moment here. So I want you to picture yourself. You're sailing the high seas. You're on this sailboat. It's a big sailboat. There's lots of people. There's 60 of you. You're part of a crew, and you've been on the ocean for a while. So you're not like, oh my God, hanging on to the side of the rail going, how am I going to survive this? And the wind is up, and you're crossing the Atlantic Ocean, and it's beautiful. Storm is brewing, and it's time to change the sails. And as part of the crew, you want to join the professional crew. So you've been practicing sailing. You've been practicing your ropes, practicing your lines. You know that this is important, and you are part of an important team. But you aspire to lead the team, so you've been training to become one of the professional crew. And it's time for your evaluation. The captain's called all hands on deck sail maneuvers. And part of your training is you have to lead and demonstrate that you know how to do this well. So the first officer standing behind you, he's expecting you to call out the commands, and the first thing you need to do is go to the side rail. And you can see there's a lot of ropes on a sailboat like this, but you should know exactly which one of those 113 ropes you need to pull on. So you approach the bar, and there's 13 of those ropes lined up in front of you, and you reach for the one that you're supposed to untie so that the rest of the crew who's standing behind you can start hauling away and lifting the sails. And as you reach for the pin, you grab the rope, and with this sense of trepidation, you decide this is the one, and you start to unwind it. And before you get to the finish, the first officer calls out behind you, "You idiot, that's the wrong rope. Get out of here. Don't talk to me for 3 days." And in that moment, you realize that you'd made an error. You pulled the wrong line. And it's all over. You've been training for weeks. You've memorized these ropes, and now where am I supposed to, how do I fit? I'm on a boat, and I can't talk to the first officer for 3 days. Now, that's tragic. That's a terrible example of an environment that's safe to fail. And in fact, that is a true story for me. I was 18, I was sailing on the ocean, and I was training to be on the pro crew, and I did exactly as I walked you in and said, "Hey, listen." And the first officer, Piot, he said exactly that. He said, "You stupid," there's a bunch of swear words, and he said, "You stupid fool." And he said, "You can't talk to me for 3 days." Like, for some reason, perhaps in his Polish naval background, that was the right way to lead somebody through learning. And that's how to treat them when they make a mistake. Now, it's funny, as I'm sitting here, I haven't retold that story to anybody in a long time. And I can actually still feel the physicality, the embarrassment, the shame, the disillusionment of, I can't believe I'm so sorry I screwed up, and now all of a sudden I was cast aside. And when I was reflecting on this talk with you today, I'm sure many of us have had leaders that just responded so terribly. And the impact for me is like looking at what happened to me in that moment towards Piot, the first officer, the man I was trying to impress, is I lost all my respect for him. I couldn't have articulated it at the time, but I no longer wanted to be special to him. I didn't want to try because the cost of failing in front of him was so catastrophic that he actually sabotaged his influence to me, even if he didn't lose his position as the first officer and I was on the junior crew. So to him, he lost nothing, but to me, he lost everything that matters. And I wanted to just contrast that as an example of Richard Branson, and he's got this F is for forgiveness, and I'm not going to dwell on this. There's a link here, and you'll get the slides later. But his concept here is when we give people second chances, that we as Virgin Airlines have reaped great rewards, because to him, it's amazing how much people lift their game when we put trust and hope in them. And he goes on in the article to describe how some people tried to steal business concepts and how the restoration has actually served him and served the people. And I just think that's, if not a perfect example, it's still a very a respectable example. So, all right. So culture for me, this is me. I own a construction company. And construction brought me into consulting and then still into construction, which is great. So this is me rappelling down a building. I am pressure washing the Dolphins Tower for those of you in Kelowna. Failure-friendly culture and how it is anchored in belonging became real for me through my pursuits as a contractor when I started working with people in the margins, people with barriers to employment, often with addictions and so on. And I chose this photo because I wanted to introduce you to Jerry. And I'm realizing here in this PowerPoint, my mouse doesn't work, but he's sitting down on the chair below me there. He's got a cowboy hat on. Jerry is a precious man and a friend of mine. Yeah, I asked his permission before we talk about him in this presentation today. He's 65. He doesn't know how to read. He stopped going to school when he was 15, and he had this talent for rebuilding motors, but he just could never read. He's taken adult reading classes and has just never managed that, and ended up in a quadding accident, going into a coma for 4 months. So he has like a disability, a permanent disability. He's the sweetest, kindest man you'll ever meet, but he has some real challenges and has been ridiculed and taken advantage of for most of his life as a result. And working with folks like this or people in recovery, and making a safe space for them in my organization as a leader in business, one of the things I had to realize is that these people are vulnerable. They come with their own sense of baggage. They've been baggage, like emotional baggage and dread for rejection, as is innate in all of us. And how I treat them, particularly when they're imperfect or inexperienced, is really what defined their experience of working with me and their willingness to come back. Because it was when I was working with addicts, or people who are on income assistance, the people from downtown, the very people that we see dealing drugs or taking heroin, it's just they don't stick around. And I'm going to be a little bit more crass here. They're bullshit meters on red alert. They've been mistreated so often that they're not going to come to work and work hard for me if they're going to experience the same kind of mistreatment. And it was a profound lesson in respect and dignity, and making space for people where they know that they can fail and be okay. They can make mistakes and come back to work, that they don't have to hide when they've done something wrong. And the results of that have been absolutely profound. This is Jerry again. He can't read. He can't read. So, and he's a great driver. So I can give him my truck, my credit card, and he can go get things. But if you tell him to go to Home Hardware, he doesn't know what Home Hardware is because he can't read the sign. So it's like, it's the yellow one on the left on Springfield across from the big blue sign that says Rona, but blue and yellow, he can get there. You just gotta be creative and get past his genuine insecurity around, he doesn't want to make a mistake. He wants to show up and belong. And it's through moments like this over the years that the lessons that I'm speaking about today became true. And they became irrefutable truths for me. And that's where I realized that when these friends of mine, my employees, I regard them as friends. We spend a lot of time together. There's real relational dynamic at play in a work context. And they need to know that they belong here. That's the question. And their failures challenge that more than any other single thing. So that's that for me. So the culture thrives, obviously. That's, if I could leave you with, I'm going to go back here. Oh, I'm working this through, guys. There we go. Okay. If I could leave you with anything, this is the slide I want to leave you with. And for the keeners in the group, I want to, I'm going to get you to draw one of these when we do a breakout session. And so this is the tool that I was thinking about to relate failure to you so that it can become part of an awareness piece. And I'm going to break this down for you because our relationship to failure often changes by our permission. Now, most of us live in and work in, this is just a piece of paper. So it's just, we live in vertical, there's a triangle here, the CEO's at the top, and we're somewhere in the hierarchy. We live and work in horizontal relationships. There is an alternate to that. We live in vertical working environments versus horizontal leadership structures. But for the purpose of this, I do want you to think of up and down and left and right, because all of us are responsible to somebody. We're responsible for somebody, and we're responsible with somebody. And smaller teams, obviously, this is challenged. There might be some overlap here, but I want you to understand that there is a real difference if you put yourself in the middle of this when you fail somebody above you versus failing somebody below you. And the consciousness that I think is meaningful here is that we're going to have places we're more comfortable to fail than others. So for example, sometimes you can be, let's pick a more casual example. When people that are with you, they're your colleagues, your peers, your friends. If you're married, this is your spouse or your partner. Like these are people that are alongside you. So no big deal if you're going for dinner with your friends and you're 15 minutes late. Ain't no thing. But what about showing up 15 minutes late for a meeting with your boss? It's like, what? And there's a sense of no problem with my friends, but oh my goodness, I might get fired if I'm late from a meeting with my boss. And it's like, and I'm just talking about the internal pressure inside of me. And it's in a window, another window parallel into that is like, hey, you ever got pulled over for a speeding ticket? And it's like, oh my goodness, my heart rate's up. I'm nervous. Well, because we failed somebody, like there's an authority above us. And with this exists in personal life, and this also exists in our professional life. But the police officer is an authority above you who has the right to distribute consequences in your world. So I'm going to get you in the breakout room and just in a few minutes here. I want you to just quickly draw this out and fill it in. Who's you're responsible with, who you're responsible to, and who you're responsible for. And I also want you to recognize that there's the two directions, the failure out and the failure in. Because if I'm going to put this in terms of a manager here, and I'm going to go forward one slide. I drew this up as a couple examples. So on the left is a work example. Obviously my PowerPoint's auto playing here. And on the right is a personal example. So taking a moment on the left, if I'm in the work context and I have some junior employees, my employees show up late, they blow the budget, they're late for a meeting, they frustrate a client, their failure can have some significant impact on me, but oftentimes I can go, I'm okay, your consequences don't define me. There's a sense of space there. Other times, have you ever worked for a boss who, when you frustrated a client, they overreacted? And that's an indicator that the circumstances really challenge their ability to be okay. And in the workspace, you're often going to have colleagues if you're on a team, but sometimes the people that we're with can actually be other departments. So if your customer success department's over here, you're working alongside the dev team. You're also working alongside the sales and marketing team. You're with them, but you might be reporting to the owner, the shareholders, the boss. There's just a different dynamic at play. So with doesn't necessarily mean if you have a team of 3 people, that's fine. Or you could be an individual as a consultant working with the middle management team of an organization. But nonetheless, they're people that are in the trenches with you, essentially in the same relationship of power with you. So, and I like the personal side because it's actually, this is also interesting that when I was walking through this in my mind, sometimes we behave totally differently at work than we do at home. And we can place a lot of pressure. Like I'm thinking about movies I've seen where people place a lot of pressure on their kids. You know, it's like, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer or a success. And if you don't do that, it actually shatters my self-image. I've seen indications like that because you're responsible for your kids. You're responsible with your partner or like your parents, their grandparents. You know, you're kind of on the same plane of taking care of the kids, but ultimately we're still under the government jurisdiction, the laws of the land. We still have an accountability to the school district, make sure your kids get to school on time. And when I realized that when I fail it's interesting. Sometimes people come to life or they join our life in a relationship. They can bring their history with us or with them to us. And you're going to see some people that really struggle with the idea of failing the people that they lead, because perhaps they grew up in a culture where "I'll never let you down" was what they were grown into, and for all kinds of reasons. But if people have a real challenge letting people down, they might take it terribly if they show up late for a meeting or fail to follow through on a commitment. And it could be something as simple as not writing down an employee's vacation request. So when the time comes, it's not in the calendar. And there's some challenges whether or not they'll get their time off. I can't believe I let you down. And there's this, I'm going to say, a disproportionately large reaction because there's an internal belief system around who we need to be for others. Because the question that, am I okay, is really actually touching on the, do I belong here? Or do I need to be perfect to be okay here? And these are all parts of our humanity that we bring to the table. We have our culture. Every employee has their own individual family cultures and things that they bring to our organization. And then as an organization, we're an eclectic blend of cultures. And my hope in discussing this today is allowing us to get more granular and experience the tension that we may naturally experience in different directions, and then let that come to our front consciousness, so that you can see first and foremost where you're comfortable, and then secondly where you might feel the most conflict internally. And then again, the directions piece. It's okay if you fail me. It's not okay if I fail you. That might be part of our paradigm as well. So I'm going to come back to this slide here. And again, take a moment, draft this down. And I think what we're going to do, either Paula or Jackie is going to dispatch us into breakout rooms. And just, I would like you to take an example in your mind, whether it be work or personal, and just populate it like I did here, so that you have an opportunity to just see yourself. And I think we're having 7 minutes or so. I'm going to turn the mic over. Keep jumping. I don't want it to keep jumping ahead on us, so I'm just going to go here. Can you see yourself on my screen? I'm going to do it this way. This isn't something that I do often, so please forgive me. Okay. we're tight on time and I don't want to shortchange you on this. So I'm going to move quickly to respect the overall timeline. So in healthy integration of failure is something I want to touch on. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts. I'm not sure why the title doesn't come out this way, but we're just going here. What I want you to start to see is that your responses matter. And in fact, you know, if my kid gets and I don't have any kids, but so this is a hypothetical situation here. If my child or my employee doesn't get the grade I want on the paper and I blow up and this is not okay, my responses actually reflect on me. They might internalize it as they failed, they're bad, they don't belong, shame, kind of like I did when I was, 19 sailing and Piat decided to assign some responsibility to me. But in truth, what we also subconsciously do is we assign a bad response back to the person because it's just unhealthy. And we've all had experiences like that where the lady in the kiosk she went nuts at the teller as she was getting groceries, and we're like, what were you doing? That was totally inappropriate. And so that also applies to us. We need to drink our own medicine here. Your responses reflect on you for better or for worse. And what that also means is if we're in the culture space and we're leading culture, and it's okay for you to fail, but I'll never let you see my failures. I'll never tell you about my failures. I don't confess my failures. I'm not in healthy relationship with my failures. I'll be perfect in front of you, but it's okay for you to fail. There's that discontinuity, and people will see that, and it will build distrust in what you're saying because your actions don't align. So we need to take responsibility for that. I have a fundamental belief that we can be hard on issues and soft on people. So I can say to Bobby, you're late again. This is the 6th time this week that you've been late. That's an issue. I can be hard on issues. What we want to obviously avoid, and you all know this, is Bobby, you stupid person, you've been late again. You're always late. Are you incapable of being at home or leaving home on time? That's hard on people. We don't need to be that. So healthy communication for me in that very simple example would look something like, Bobby, you belong here. We value you. Our business is better with you in it. And we care a lot about you, but it seems that you keep showing up late. In fact, it looks like it's been 6 times this last 2 weeks that you've shown up late. And what you're communicating to me and us as a team is that you don't actually care or prioritize us because we're sitting here waiting for you. And so we can address the issue like, Bobby, be here on time because we need to get started, without throwing the human being under the bus or lowering our standards. And it's going to be a really hard tension for some of us to manage because it might not be a natural muscle. We might either avoid the issue and not bring it up with Bobby, or we might get a little bit too direct and make sure that he gets the message. And what I want you and I to always remember is that belonging should never be compromised because somebody's making a mistake. But you should also never avoid good leadership as you address the issues for the benefit of the whole team. Cultivating belonging is I'm going to say the antidote to all this. There's a reality. Sometimes people fail, and they fail bad, and it costs the business lots of money, or time, or customers, or opportunity. And if some people make mistakes big enough, it can cost the business the right to continue in the marketplace. So these issues need to be addressed, and oftentimes there is a withdrawal from the emotional bank account, the trust bank account, not just the financial bank account. And if that emotional bank account in a team, being the trust factor, gets withdrawn too much, bankruptcy and brokenness take place, and the team can dissolve, or there can be these fractures like there was with me and Piat, where it's like something broke. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to address this at the time or even be aware of it till years later, but something broke and I disconnected from him. I still had to serve and kind of honor his commands, but I no longer wanted to be like Piat, be with Piat. When I had time off, I wasn't even thinking about it. Something fractured. Dr. John Gottman is one of those leading guys in the science of relationships. And my favorite thing to do is to cultivate belonging is to get proactive. So if what always gets addressed in employee reviews at lunchtime, sit down meetings is what you've done wrong, people will avoid those meetings, and it builds a real deficit. So I'm always, I had to train the muscle. And again, this goes back to working with vulnerable people, because I have to reinforce belonging because they came to the table believing they didn't belong, is to notice the good things they do. And like, not superficially like, hey, good job. Like, hey, listen, Bobby, I know you actually, you killed that report. You wrote, I saw the graphics you put on. I saw the time and attention, the thorough detail. Like, I just want you to know that matters. And you did a great job. And not following it up with, and next time, make sure you send it on time. Like, just notice the good, and don't just notice it on the inside, speak it out. Because if I notice the good that you did, if Jackie did a great job coordinating this meeting and Paula did an awesome job organizing the IT, and I sit there and go, wow, they're just great, and I hold that on the inside, it's of no benefit to them. The benefit to them and the belonging and the culture goes up when I go, hey, just so you know, I noticed. And we need to develop the muscle of getting it out. Why? Because when people have a strong foundation of belonging, then I can go, oh, by the way, and Paula, when you deleted everybody from the meeting, it kind of busted the flow, or whatever. You can actually address the issues, and people don't go, oh, do I belong here? Because they know they do, and they can respectfully modify the behavior to offset the challenge that's in front of you that we would call failure. And evolving our paradigm to actually integrate failure, like, here's the big news. You're not perfect. Neither am I, right? Like, so it's okay. You fail, I fail. That's normal. We need to accept that and embody that, embrace it. Because, I have a quote here on my slide, failure is one thing, but what happens next is entirely another. And oftentimes if there's a mistake in the business, we need to recover. So that's why the foundation of belonging is so critical, because you need to repair what's been broken. And if you have a good team that's willing to like come together and work with you, the mitigating the damage factor, which is actually the business case, mistakes happen, but having a strong team that can rally around and recover is resilient and adaptable, and all great things. But that's there if we cultivate the belonging piece, and then we do failure well as an organization. All right. The sweet icing of communication, hard on issues, soft on people. A big piece of when I fail you, I need to identify the impact that it's had on you and get it. So the success of your failure is really going to depend on how you respond to it. I wish we had more time, because this matters. But what I wanted to say is like, hey, if I for example say, team, friends, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare my slides really well. I rushed it all together. I obviously didn't include all the information I needed. I did not give us enough time, and I'm sorry that we got into a topic that we couldn't close in the time frame required, and that's on me. I'm sorry, that's on me. I'm not questioning as to whether or not I'm okay, but I am acknowledging and respecting you in the impact that my actions have had on you in this hypothetical situation. And then as leaders in an organization, and this goes back to that like cross-functional T, when we take responsibility for the failures, sometimes it's not your fault. If your counter or your front end staff was rude to a customer, the customer calls you and you go, you know what, that's absolutely unacceptable communication. I'm very sorry, Mrs. Jones, and we'll do better next time. Not your fault. Other times it's your fault because it's your position and you need to take responsibility for it anyways. And sometimes leaders and executives are not always good at this. As an example, if you're the CFO and one of your account managers has been doing accounting fraud, and it's like the CFO needs to stand up and go, you know what, as the overarching CFO person, that's on me and I'm sorry, and we're going to do a full audit, take care of this. Other times it's totally your mess and it's all yours to clean up, and that's totally okay too. And don't be afraid of doing that. This is the dark side. And I guess this is where I'm going to dwell on this. Because here's the deal, no matter how well you respond to failure and how well you communicate, you cannot control other people's responses to your failure. And oftentimes this is that up arrow. You could have a tyrant of a boss, and they're just entirely disrespectful with your humanity. I would say to people like that, don't tolerate that. Be a good leader, care well for the people that are beside you and beneath you. And I'm going to skip forward, see, like I got lessons from an eagle. I'm thinking like the wingspan. These people that you touch parallel and the people beneath you that you cover with your leadership, be a great leader for them. And if you're stuck with a leader that is constantly, it's just not healthy, you get to consider whether you choose to stay, because you belong where you are, and you don't have to be mistreated, period. It's also, you're going to have employees that are just not okay failing, because you're somebody's leader. Like, you're the up arrow for somebody, and you might see some really weird behavior. I'm thinking about some of the stories you see on YouTube where the police officers, like people just freaking out on their car because they got a speeding ticket, because they're not okay with failing up yet. And that's okay, but you want to communicate wisely with these people and lead them in the way of a healthy, integrated sense of failure, reassure them that they still belong here. But the issue still needs to be corrected. And the dark side of our healthy communication, when you get really good at it, people recoil from manipulation. So you can have all the right answers and all the right, I'm so sorry, I was late, it's on me, am I bad? And never change your behavior. People will start to distrust your communication if the actions don't align with your newfound sense of awareness. Avoid the shit sandwich, which is one good thing, one bad thing, one good thing. Red flag, if you do that, people don't hear the two good things, they hear the criticism. Again, going back to Gottman's, like constantly inserting positive, you did this well, I noticed, you're good, you belong, you're here, I'm with you, with no sense of criticism. If it's an issue, address it as an issue. Don't try to do the sandwich thing, because it breaks trust again. And this is where I'll leave you. We were going to do a breakout room. We don't have time for that, but I'm going to leave you with this as a pondering. Proactively, how can you be okay? Once I realized, as I grew through my journey, this was a behind the scenes settling some things inside of myself, because once I realized that I'm okay, what you do doesn't confront that in me anymore, or it confronts me less and less. And then the other question, because you're responsible for people beside you, and I want to say below you in a proverbial sense, how can you reinforce what the marketing team's doing in relationship to what the dev team's doing in relationship to what the project management team's doing, that they belong? Because when you start putting those deposits in, all of a sudden, then you're reinforcing the strong culture code that's going to allow failure to be okay. So there's your homework. Sorry to leave you with homework, because the quote I wanted to leave is that the positive attributes of cultivating belonging triumph collateral impact of failure every single time. There we go. 2 minutes to spare.